24. Copyright in software. Legal consequence. Be aware that the code you write is protected by copyright, and typically the employer holds this copyright for work created during employment. Real-time scenario. Rohan contributes significantly to the codebase of his company's main software product. After leaving, he wants to use snippets of the code he wrote in a personal project on GitHub. However, since the copyright likely belongs to his former employer, doing so without permission could be copyright infringement. Practical advice. Respect copyright. Understand that the code you write for your employer is protected by copyright, and the company usually owns this right. 25. Trade secrets protection. Legal consequence. Understand what constitutes a trade secret within your company, example algorithms, proprietary processes, and your obligation to protect this information. Real-time scenario. Deepa, a machine learning engineer, has access to her company's proprietary algorithm that gives them a significant competitive advantage. Before leaving to join a competitor, she copies the documentation and high-level design of this algorithm. This could be considered misappropriation of trade secrets, leading to legal action. Practical advice. Identify trade secrets. Understand what information your company considers to be trade secrets. This might be explicitly communicated or evident from the nature of the information. 26. Open source contributions. Legal consequence. If your work involves contributing to open source projects, understand your company's policies regarding such contributions and ensure compliance with open source licenses. Real-time scenario. Karthik, a developer, contributes a significant feature to an open source project as part of his work at InnovateSoft. However, he does so without understanding InnovateSoft's policy on open source contributions or the specific license of the project. This could lead to IP ownership conflicts for InnovateSoft. Practical advice. Know your company's policy. Check if your company has a policy on contributing to open source projects. Understand the approval process and any guidelines you need to follow. 27. Moral rights. Legal consequence. Be aware of your moral rights as an author of software code, example the right to be attributed, although these are often waived in employment contracts. Real-time scenario. Rahul, a key architect of a widely used software product by his company, leaves. The company later releases a new version without acknowledging his significant contributions. While his economic rights were likely assigned to the company, he might have certain moral rights regarding attribution, although these are often waived in employment contracts. Practical advice. Understand moral rights. Be aware that as the creator of a work, you might have certain moral rights, such as the right to be attributed as the author and the right to object to derogatory treatment of your work. 28. Data minimization. Legal consequence. Understand the principle of collecting and retaining only the necessary personal data. Collecting excessive data can lead to increased risk and potential legal liabilities under data privacy laws. Real-time scenario. As part of a new user registration process, a software company collects a wide range of personal information, including details that are not strictly required for the core functionality of the app, example marital status, hobbies. This excessive data collection increases the risk in case of a data breach and might not comply with the principle of data minimization. Practical advice. Understand data requirements. When designing or developing features that involve collecting personal data, ensure you understand the specific data points that are truly necessary for the intended purpose. 29. Purpose limitation. Legal consequence. Be aware that personal data should only be processed for the specific purpose for which it was collected. Using data for new, unrelated purposes without consent can violate data privacy laws. Real-time scenario. A software company collects user email addresses for the purpose of sending service updates. Later, the marketing team wants to use these same email addresses to send promotional material for unrelated products without obtaining fresh consent for this new purpose. This could be a violation of purpose limitation principles. Practical advice. Understand data processing purposes. Be clear about the specific purposes for which personal data is being collected and processed in your projects. 30. Consent requirements. Legal consequence. Understand when and how user consent needs to be obtained for processing their personal data. Processing personal data without valid consent, where required, can lead to legal penalties. Real-time scenario: a mobile app developed by a software team collects users' location data continuously without clearly informing users about this collection and obtaining their explicit consent. This might violate the consent requirements under data privacy laws. Practical advice: identify consent requirements, understand the specific situations under data privacy laws where user consent is required for processing personal data. 31. Reporting data breaches. Legal consequence: know the procedure for reporting any suspected or actual data breaches immediately. Failure to report breaches in a timely manner as required by law can lead to additional penalties. Real-time scenario: a software engineer discovers a potential data breach in their company's customer database. Instead of immediately reporting it to the security team, he tries to investigate it himself, causing a delay in containment and notification. This delay could lead to greater legal repercussions for the company. Practical advice: know the reporting procedure, familiarize yourself with your company's data breach reporting policy and the designated contact persons or teams. 32. Cross-border data transfers. Legal consequence: if your work involves transferring data internationally, be aware of the legal restrictions and requirements under Indian law and the laws of the recipient country. Real-time scenario: a software team is developing a global application that involves transferring personal data of Indian users to servers located outside India. They need to ensure that these transfers comply with the cross-border data transfer regulations under the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, 2023, which might require specific safeguards or agreements. Practical advice: understand transfer regulations, be aware of the rules and regulations governing the transfer of personal data outside of India. 33. Employee data privacy. Legal consequence: understand your rights regarding the privacy of your own personal data held by your employer. Employers also have obligations regarding the collection, processing, and storage of employee data. Real-time scenario: a software company collects extensive personal information about its employees, including their social media activity, without a clear legitimate purpose or their explicit consent. This could be a violation of employee data privacy rights. Practical advice: know your rights, be aware that you have rights regarding your personal data held by your employer, including the right to know what data is being collected and how it is being used. 34. Scope of confidential information, revisited. Legal consequence: clearly understand what information is considered confidential under your NDA. Ambiguity can lead to unintentional breaches. Real-time scenario: Kavya, a business analyst in a software product company, discusses general industry trends and publicly available information about competitor products with a friend who works at another company. Kavya believes this isn't confidential, but her NDA might have a broader definition that includes even aggregated, non-specific information related to her company's strategic direction. Practical advice: seek clarity. If you are unsure whether certain information falls under the definition of confidential information in your NDA, seek clarification from your manager or legal department. 35. Duration of confidentiality obligations. Legal consequence: be aware of how long your confidentiality obligations last, even after you leave the company. Some information might remain confidential indefinitely, while others might have a specific time limit. Real-time scenario: Tarun's NDA with his former software company stated that source code and specific algorithms were to be kept confidential in perpetuity. Even 5 years after leaving, sharing details of these could still be a breach of his agreement. Practical advice: check your NDA's term, note the duration specified for your confidentiality obligations in your employment contract or separate NDA. 36. Exceptions to confidentiality. Legal consequence: understand any exceptions to your confidentiality obligations, example legally required disclosures. You might be legally obligated to disclose certain information despite an NDA. Real-time scenario: A government agency investigating a potential cybercrime subpoenas certain internal documents from the software company where Vikram works. Despite his NDA, Vikram might be legally required to provide this information to the authorities. Practical advice. Be aware of legal obligations. Understand that your confidentiality obligations might have exceptions in cases of legal requirements, such as court orders or government investigations. 37. Use of confidential information. Legal consequence. Only use confidential information for legitimate business purposes within the scope of your employment. Personal use or unauthorized sharing is a breach. Real-time scenario. Shalini, a marketing executive at a software firm, uses internal sales data, which is marked as confidential, to help her friend who works at a competing company understand market trends. This is a misuse of confidential information for personal gain and could have legal repercussions. Practical advice. Stick to business purposes, only access and use confidential information that is necessary for you to perform your job duties. 38. Return of confidential information. Legal consequence. Upon termination, ensure you return all company property and confidential information. Failure to do so can lead to legal action. Real-time scenario. When Amit leaves his software company, he keeps a copy of the company's client database on his personal hard drive, thinking it might be useful for future ventures. His former employer could sue him for retaining confidential information after his employment ended. Practical advice. Follow exit procedures. Adhere to your company's exit procedures regarding the return of company property, including laptops, access cards, and documents, both physical and digital. 39. Reasonableness of restrictions. Non-compete solicitation. Legal consequence. While generally void post-employment, courts might consider the reasonableness of the scope, duration, and geographical limitations of non-compete and non-solicitation clauses during employment and in very specific, justifiable post-employment scenarios. Real-time scenario. Kiran's employment contract has a clause preventing him from working for any competitor in India for the next 5 years after leaving. A court would likely deem this an unreasonable restriction on his right to work. However, a clause preventing him from soliciting his former company's top 5 clients for 1 year might be viewed differently depending on the specifics of his role and the client relationships. Practical advice. Challenge unreasonable clauses. If you believe a non-compete or non-solicitation clause in your contract is overly broad or unreasonable, you might consider seeking legal advice on its enforceability. 40. Garden leave clauses. Legal consequence. Be aware of clauses that might require you to remain employed but not actively work during your notice period, potentially restricting your ability to join a competitor immediately. Real-time scenario. When Meera resigns from her senior leadership role at a software firm, she is placed on garden leave for her 3-month notice period. She continues to receive her salary but is not allowed to perform any work or contact clients or employees. This prevents her from starting immediately at a competitor. Practical advice. Understand garden leave terms. If your contract includes a garden leave clause, understand the duration and any restrictions placed on you during this period. 41. Definition of sexual harassment. Legal consequence. Have a clear understanding of what constitutes sexual harassment, including physical, verbal, and non-verbal conduct. Real-time scenario. During a team outing, a senior male developer, Rohan, repeatedly makes sexually suggestive comments about Priya's attire, even after she asks him to stop. This verbal conduct, creating a hostile environment, can be considered sexual harassment under the POS Act. Practical advice. Educate yourself. Thoroughly understand the broad definition of sexual harassment as outlined in your company's POS policy and the POS Act itself. It goes beyond physical contact. 40. To employer's obligations, PO. Legal consequence. Be aware of your employer's legal obligations under the POS Act to prevent and address sexual harassment, including creating a safe environment, having a policy, and establishing an ICC. Real-time scenario. Despite having more than 10 employees, TechStart India does not have a formally constituted Internal Complaints Committee, ICC, as mandated by the POS Act. This lack of a redressal mechanism is a violation of the law. Practical advice. Know your employer's policy, familiarize yourself with your company's post policy and ensure it aligns with the requirements of the Act. 43 Internal Complaints Committee, ICC. Legal consequence. Understand the composition and functioning of your company's ICC and the process for filing a complaint. Real-time scenario. Shruti, who faced sexual harassment, files a formal complaint with her company's ICC. She needs to understand the inquiry process, the timelines involved, and the potential outcomes. Practical advice. Know the members. Identify the members of your company's ICC. Their names and contact details should be readily available. Familiarize yourself with the step-by-step procedure for filing a complaint with the ICC, including the format and required information. 44 Rights of the complainant and respondent, POH. Legal consequence. Be aware of the rights and responsibilities of both the person alleging harassment and the person accused during the ICC inquiry process. Real-time scenario. During an ICC inquiry, the complainant, Priya, has the right to a fair hearing, confidentiality, as much as possible, and support. The respondent, Rohan, also has the right to present his case and be heard. Practical advice. Know your rights. Understand your rights as either a complainant or a respondent in a post-inquiry, including the right to representation, confidentiality, and a fair process. If you are a respondent, cooperate with the ICC inquiry and present your case truthfully and respectfully. 45 Confidentiality of proceedings, POF. Legal consequence. Understand the importance of maintaining confidentiality during the ICC inquiry process to protect the privacy and dignity of all parties involved and to ensure a fair investigation. Real-time scenario. News about Shruti's sexual harassment complaint and the ongoing ICC inquiry starts spreading within the company through gossip. This breach of confidentiality can cause distress to both the complainant and the respondent and can undermine the integrity of the process. Practical advice. Respect confidentiality. Whether you are a complainant, respondent, witness, or ICC member, maintain the confidentiality of the inquiry proceedings to the extent possible under the law and company policy. 46 Leave entitlements. Legal consequence. Understand your rights regarding different types of leave, casual, sick, privilege earned leave, and the company's leave policies. Real-time scenario. Arjun applies for sick leave, as per the company policy of 10 days per year. However, his manager denies it, citing a critical project deadline, even though Arjun has valid medical reasons. This could be a violation of Arjun's leave entitlements. Practical advice. Know your company's policy. Familiarize yourself with your company's specific leave policies, including the number of days for each type of leave, the application process, and the rules for availing them. Whenever possible, plan your leave in advance and follow the company's procedure for applying. 47 Maternity and paternity benefits. Legal consequence. Be aware of the legal provisions related to maternity leave, paternity leave, and other benefits for new parents as mandated by law, example the Maternity Benefit Act, 1961. Real-time scenario. Priya, a pregnant software engineer, is denied maternity leave by her company, which claims it's a small organization and doesn't fall under the purview of the Maternity Benefit Act. This might be a misinterpretation of the law, as the Act's applicability has been broadened over time. Practical advice. Know your entitlements. Familiarize yourself with the provisions of the Maternity Benefit Act for women and any paternity leave policies offered by your company or mandated by law. Understand the duration of leave, eligibility criteria, and other benefits. 48 Employee benefits. Legal consequence. Understand the details of any employee benefits offered by the company, such as health insurance, retirement plans, and other allowances. Disputes can arise if these benefits are not provided as promised or are changed without proper communication. Real-time scenario. Rohan's offer letter mentioned comprehensive health insurance coverage. However, after joining, he discovers that the policy has numerous exclusions and limitations that were not disclosed initially. Practical advice. Review benefit details. Carefully review the details of all employee benefits offered by your company, including the scope of coverage, eligibility criteria, and any terms and conditions. Ask for detailed policy documents. 49 Trade union rights. Legal consequence. Be aware of your rights to form or join trade unions, although this is less common in the software industry in India. Laws like the Trade Unions Act, 1926, protect these rights. Real-time scenario. A group of software employees in a large IT services company wants to form a union to collectively bargain for better working conditions and benefits. The management discourages this and threatens those involved with potential repercussions. This could be an infringement on their rights under the Trade Unions Act. Practical advice. Know your rights, understand your fundamental rights to form or join trade unions as protected by Indian law. Understand collective bargaining. Be aware of the process and implications of collective bargaining through a recognized trade union. 50 Conclusion. Knowledge, understanding clearly, questioning and clarification will solve your problems and as well as your near and dear ones. I hope the knowledge on Code of Conduct will make difference to you all. Thank you. Please encourage me with more content like this. Please subscribe my channel.